we walk through the cell block transfer where our game and it also raises one of the biggest questions. Why does anyone even follow the Joker? Like, everything we've just seen in the past minute shows that the Joker is a deranged psychopath who doesn't view anything or anyone as important, which honestly is comic accurate. It's crazy to think that Batman Arkham Asylum is 14 years old from the time I've started writing the script. It's also crazier to think that we haven't seen another true Arkham game since 2015. You know, because we got this game instead, but you know, we don't talk about that one, it's not canon. Honestly, when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with the Arkham series. I remember constantly playing the challenge maps to beat my high score and absolutely loving the story of these games. Before I settled on doing this video, I was planning on analysing Marvel Spider-Man first, but I thought it would be way more interesting for me to analyse Arkham Asylum, simply due to the fact that it's the grandfather of the free flow combat system, and it gave the blueprint for games such as Marvel Spider-Man to soar. So now I'm going to take you guys through this retrospective of Batman Arkham Asylum, and hopefully this will be the start of a series so we can also go through and rank all of the other Arkham games. The trim is peak. Don't worry guys, this isn't a sponsorship. All I want to do is make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe, and I also want to point you guys towards my community tab, which is where I'm going to be keeping you guys updated on the videos I'm working on, as well as I'm going to be giving you guys some sort of creative control, as in I'm going to let you guys decide on what videos you want to see next through polls. Obviously, if one guy votes, I guess I'm going to prioritize what it is that they voted on, so make sure you get out that community tab. And other than that though, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video. The game begins with Batman rushing to Arkham as he's just captured the Joker. The first scene is quite cinematic and ominous due to the pathetic fallacy of the rain. He walks in with the Joker quite casually, and we're introduced to the Warden of Arkham, Warden Sharpe. Batman decides to walk with the Joker to his cell as he feels something is off. One thing I want to point out is Mark Hamill's fantastic performance even in the first couple of minutes. Another thing that I want to point out is that we can tell this is an experienced Batman, as Batman already has the trust of the Arkham guards. The inmates are chanting Joker's name, which connotes that he's been here multiple times, and each of Joker's joke threats are being treated very seriously. As we're walking with Joker, we also get a tiny bit of foreshadowing, as Killer Croc says he has Batman's scent, and Joker explains that it's weird that a fire at Blackgate would move most of his crew to Arkham. It shows that there's a method to the madness. Shortly after, Batman hands the Joker to the asylum staff, and Batman wonders what Joker's after, seeing as he's let himself get captured very easily. Surprise surprise, the Joker kills both guards escorting him and sends his thugs out to attack Batman.
Welcome to the madhouse, Batman! I set a trap, and you sprang it gloriously! Now let's get this party started.
This is our first introduction to the free flow combat system, or simply just Arkham Combat. It's really simple to be honest, but very effective in execution while providing a suitable challenge. You have one button for attack, one for counter, a dodge button, a stun button, and your triggers for your various gadgets. Once you knock an enemy down, you have the option to ground takedown them, which will incapacitate them, but even if you don't, your normal strikes will still take down the thugs swiftly. It's crazy to think that 15 years down the line, this combat system will be heavily refined and still be one of the best in the entire industry. We quickly take out the thugs and rush to find Joker as he now has full control over the asylum. As we run through the corridors, we come across a hostage situation as Zsasz, one of Batman's rogues galleries, has taken one of the asylum guards hostage. In order to not be seen on the ground, We grapple up to the gargoyles and dive kick him from the air to knock him out. We then receive a transmission from Harley Quinn as she reveals that she has the Warden hostage, so saving him becomes one of our goals. I love a lot of the design decisions that Rocksteady made in this game. The corridors and gargoyles give off a Resident Evil vibe, and the designs of Joker and Harley Quinn are perfect as they're similar to the comics but also down to earth representations. Oracle then contacts us and says that the Joker has planted bombs all over Gotham and they'll detonate if anyone steps on Arkham Island. However, again, to show this is a very experienced Batman, he responds and tells Oracle that the Joker is lying to keep people away from the island, which is a good explanation as to why it's only Batman and the Arkham guards that are dealing with Joker. We escape the room that Zsasz was in, and we proceed onward to a room full of Joker laughing gas. We grapple up to the room and save everyone inside, including the inmate, which shows that Batman's no-kill rule is true for this interpretation. Further into the asylum, we find Joker on top of a massive crate, and he releases the first boss, a Titan-fueled thug, but the formula hasn't been perfected, so he ends up suffering from, in simple terms, a heart attack. The Joker then goads on Batman to kill him before he escapes, but predictably, Batman does not, which the Joker even comments on, and he escapes even further into the asylum. A guard then informs us that the Joker has gone into extreme isolation, in which we try to follow him, but the transportation system to the extreme isolation is shut down. Joker then gives us a transmission which shows the officer Frank Boles, who we were transporting with the Joker, knocking out Commissioner Gordon and taking him to Harley. We inform Oracle, who is Commissioner Gordon's daughter Barbara, that Boles has her father hostage, but we vow to get her back, starting with an analysis of the crime scene. Boles had dropped his alcohol flask, so we scan it and use it to track the traces of alcohol back to Boles. We trace it all the way to an elevator shaft, which Harley then blows up to slow us down. We park our way up, knock out a few guards, and come across our first situation with armed thugs. Their introduction is actually quite dark. They kill one guard mercilessly, as another begs for his life as he has a wife and kids. They don't listen, and in fact mock the guard for telling them, "You don't have to do this." I actually love this portrayal of Joker's crew, as it shows that they're the worst of the worst, sadistic and evil, but even with all of that, Batman still will try to save everyone, which is interesting when you have the context of the Ra's al Ghul DLC in Arkham Knight, but that's another conversation for another time. This is also the first time we get to see Batman's stealth takedowns, and they are very quick and efficient, again showing his expertise. Shortly after, we get our first true Predator section, which as a kid, I remember I was afraid of these thugs, especially when I'd get caught. Nowadays, I definitely feel more like the Predator rather than the prey, and I actually find it more interesting to see the thugs' behavior change from calm to terrified as more of them are taken down. After taking out all of the thugs, we come across Boles' body and find out that the Joker killed him because he knew we were tracking him. Straight after that encounter, the Riddler's bum ass hacks into our communications and makes us solve a riddle, which we do in about 0.1 seconds. Yeah, as usual, he's useless. Right after, a guard explains to us that Boles came into the room with Harley Quinn, the thugs, and Gordon. So in order to protect himself, he hid in the safe room and monitored the cameras. We proceed onwards through the utility corridor, which leads us to the outside, where we get our first glimpse of Arkham Island in a very cinematic fashion. Although the location is small compared to later entries, Arkham Island is presented as very grand in this game, which is also supported by the number of different environments within the asylum. We speak to a couple of the guards and they seem to be confident in their control of the asylum, so we walk on ahead where we get an alert from the Batmobile, which is currently being attacked by Harley Quinn and her thugs. On the way, we help some guards out with two armed thugs, which could be seen as just another tutorial section, but in my opinion it foreshadows how unprepared the Arkham guards are for dealing with Joker's crew. Once we reach the Batmobile, we take out the thugs and collect the explosive gel gadget in the trunk, and we use detective mode to find Gordon's pipe, which we use to trace his whereabouts from the tobacco inside the pipe. While we're tracking Gordon, On the way, we spot some thugs seemingly building something in front of the visitor center, which may come into play later on. Gordon's tobacco trace leads us to the medical facility, where we kind of find Gordon.
Where's Gordon?
Wouldn't you like
I'm
to
over
know?
here!
Shut up!
Ah! You crazy bitch!
But we can't exactly get to him, so we enter through the roof and go straight into our second Predator encounter. We quickly take out all of the thugs and talk to a couple of the doctors that tell us about 3 other doctors, that being Dr. Kellerman, Dr. Chen, and Dr. Young, who have been taken by the thugs into other rooms within the facility, so we decide to go and rescue them. One thing that I want to point out is the environment of the medical facility, which honestly feels like a horror movie location. The thugs strapped 2 doctors to a saw-looking machine, which I'm not too sure if it's an actual medical machine in real life, and the rest of the facility is run down, as we can see from the walls and the structural weaknesses that you can exploit in Predator. It almost makes you wonder how anyone in this location could be treated or rehabilitated, and it completely contrasts the general feel of achievement and help that's being sold when the Arkham staff and Warden Sharpe are advertising themselves over the corridor recordings.
Penelope Young. Since joining our team 2 years ago, Arkham is now at the forefront of research into understanding the human mind.
Good afternoon, Arkham. Let's talk about the mind. How can such a complex entity be understood and eventually treated when it breaks? How indeed. Project Titan's goal is to create a test
Ooh.
to fully probe our special cases in a safe, risk-free manner.
We go to save Dr. Young first, and before we save her, she says a couple of interesting things to the thugs guarding her.
I have done exactly as you asked.
Look, you think I can? Stop your whining and listen good. If anyone goes near you without Joker's express permission, then I've been ordered to make sure you are taken out ASAP. Looks like you're a marketing chip. Gotta tell you, the boss is all over this job. Planned like a military operation. Friends on the inside and out.
I am quite aware that this job, as you call it, requires friends. What I want to know is why you chose me. Did Joker specify me? Why don't you let me talk to him? I'm sure we can settle it.
Once more, I am going to hurt you. You understand? Shut the hell up. He'll talk to you. Till then, keep that trap of yours zipped.
Once we save her, we have a small conversation with her, and then proceed to save Dr. Kellerman and Cash from laughing gas and Dr. Chen from a couple of thugs. As we exit surgery and head through the corridor, we encounter our first high security henchmen, which I guess would be the first rendition of their armored henchmen. These guys are apparently maximum security inmates from Blackgate that were transferred, which is also shown through their dark red clothing, intimidating masks, and their aggressive stance with their knives. In order to take these guys out, you have to stun them with your cape to lower their guard and then attack them. After we deal with that, we head back to the sanatorium and meet up with all the other doctors and Cash. Dr. Young informs us that she needs to go back to Arkham Mansion to get her research notes, which apparently are very important to the Joker. Cash offers to take her there, which he ends up doing as an elevator gets called up with more armed thugs, so everyone leaves to get to safety. Swiftly, we take out the thugs and we track Gordon's trail into the elevator, so we enter and head down. As the door closes, the Joker gives us an ominous warning by telling us to prepare to face our fears. When this happens, you can hear the sound of gas enter the elevator, the surrounding area becomes visually hazy, and Batman starts coughing, which can only mean one thing. Once we leave the elevator, we see what I can only describe as a horror scene of doctors and thugs screaming and panicking. They name drop Scarecrow during this scene, so it's clear who we're going after, but soon we'll see that not everything seems quite right. After Joker gives us a very scary image of himself implanted into our minds, him in a thong, we proceed down to the corridor and see Commissioner Gordon scream for help as he's dragged away by what I can only assume is a monster at this point. As this happens, the camera starts to tilt to one side, an orange tint is placed over the surroundings, Batman's eyes turn orange, and an ominous vocal sound starts playing. We catch up to Gordon and find out that whatever he was dragged by killed him, so we try to contact Oracle, but strangely a Miss Cool sound plays. We walk towards the only destination pointed out to us, which is the morgue, and as we do this, the walls around us start decaying and multiple cockroaches come out of the walls. As we enter, many strange voices start telling us to leave, which increase in volume the more you stay in the room.
Like, what am I doing? Oh, this is scary, you know? What the f? Hey, yo! Shush! What the f? I never heard this when I was a kid. What the?
Out of fear, we leave, but all it does is take us back to the morgue, which now has 3 body bags on the table, which then leads to this scene.
Father, you should have stood up to him, son. Like a man. Mom?
Help us, Bruce. Don't let us die.
Now, this entire section is brilliant, as many people who either aren't too familiar to Batman lore, or those who aren't paying attention might completely miss what's going on and assume that these events are real. Also, the morgue scene the first time you enter is particularly scary and plays into the themes of an asylum, as the voices in your head constantly bounce between each earphone for those playing with earphones or a headset, which is also semi-referenced in a later scene. We also get an interesting glimpse of Batman's psyche during this scene, since through the Thomas and Martha Wayne hallucinations we can infer that Bruce felt as if he was weak and left his parents for dead on that tragic night, which is why he eventually becomes Batman. This would also make sense as you can pay respects to Thomas and Martha Wayne in later entries in the series, which is always presented as a significant moment for Batman every single time. After we get jump scared by Scarecrow, it becomes clear to us as to what's happening here. We turn around to see a massive void with a couple of platforms from the asylum floating in the air. As we walk up, Scarecrow reveals himself and tells us that we're in his world now.
You're in my world now!
Now this section of the game turns into a platforming predator encounter, where the goal is to platform your way to a bat signal without Scarecrow spotting you as he rotates around the arena. Overall, this section is a nice change of pace, but I'm thankful there's only 3 of these encounters because it can feel quite boring to wait around as to not get spotted by Scarecrow. Also, the controls can be kind of clunky, which makes it irritating to maneuver around, but the positive I can give for these sections is that the atmosphere is brilliant. After we stop hallucinating, Oracle contacts us to ask us what happened, and we give her a quick rundown, which then leads to us retracing our steps and confirming that the body we saw before wasn't actually Gordon. We run through the corridor, we quickly dispatch the slasher-like high security henchman, and we follow the arrows on the ground, which leads us to Harley Quinn and Gordon. To save Gordon, Joker tells us we have to get to Harley without being spotted, otherwise Harley will kill Gordon. In a way, this encounter doesn't make sense because you'd think it would be more beneficial for Joker to kill Gordon, so you could just chalk this up to a gameplay scenario. However, what I think is the correct way to think about this scenario is that to the Joker this is a game, which checks out from who the Joker is in Batman lore. It makes more sense as to why he's specifically chosen to take Batman through each of these scenarios, and it relates to Batman and the Joker's relationship, where from this point what I can infer through current and prior knowledge is that the Joker wants Batman to indulge in the chaos and essentially join Joker in his quote-unquote playground. Anyways, we sneak past the guards and take down Harley, and even Batman picks up that Joker is essentially just toying around with them. Gordon directs us to something below the chambers that we just saved them from, so we investigate and find Bane, who looks like he's been starving for a minute. Batman asks him what happened, and he tells us that it was Dr. Young that put him in that state, which relates back to the conversation that the thugs were having with her, and it explains why the thugs were guarding her so closely compared to the other doctors. On a second playthrough, this will become more apparent, whereas on a first playthrough, many players may have missed the subtle foreshadowing. Joker then pumps Bane full of quote-unquote venom, and a boss fight ensues which is quite similar to the previous boss fight with the Titan-fueled thug. After beating Bane, the room that we're in collapses and we escape through a sewer grate to avoid getting crushed. We meet Gordon on top, who informs us that Harley Quinn escaped, and we call in the Batmobile to our location. Bane breaks through the wall and exclaims that he will break Batman and then the Bruja, being Dr. Young, but Batman says,
I will break you, Batman! Then the Bruja!
No, Bane. This time I break you.
Now there's two things I want to point out with this scene. Firstly, Batman references a scene in the comics where Bane breaks Batman's back, which implies that this happened in the Arkhamverse, but as some of you may know, this along with the other couple of details in the game get retconned in later entries, which ties into something that we'll address later on in this video. Secondly, this scene also shows again Batman's intelligence and experience, as he's immediately called in the Batmobile, knowing full well that Bane wasn't down for the count, and he used it as leverage to essentially quote-unquote drown him, which I assume he knew wouldn't kill him from previous battles. Once Bane's dealt with, Gordon leaves Arkham Island on a boat, and we contact Oracle so she can do some research on Dr. Young and start heading towards a Batcave hidden on Arkham Island. Batman also points out in this scene that Bane was stronger than usual, which gives a reason as to why Joker would want this new venom that Dr. Young has created. We start heading towards Dead Man's Point, but on our way, we quickly beat on some thugs who are again seemingly working on some type of structure. Once they've been dealt with, we make our way there and find out that Batman's a psychopath. I mean, we already knew this already. And apparently Dead Man's Point is a famous self-deletion spot on the island. He saved the guy from losing all his rings there and managed to stumble across a cave in which he built a Batcave there for emergency situations. We attempt to meet the Wu, but end up landing at the cave entrance, and as we walk in we get our first look at a Batcave in the Arkham series. Honestly, there isn't much here, so there isn't really anything to really talk about, but I guess it's neat to have a portable Batcave. Oracle gives us the rundown on Dr. Young, and we find out she was involved in an expensive project which involved experimenting on Arkham patients to create a more powerful formula of venom. However, we find out that the actual formula for Titan is missing, so we arm up by grabbing the Batclaw and head off to find Dr. Young and her research. One thing I want to point out about the Batclaw in this game is that it's a lot less useful than in later titles. It's more so used as a means to solve puzzles or in Predator encounters pull thugs from ledges, so in this game I think its inclusion is just okay. We get jump scared by Killer Croc in the sewers, and Oracle tells us that apparently the Joker was the one paying Dr. Young to create the Titan formula. Over time, Dr. Young eventually blocks the Joker's payments, which Batman and Oracle speculate that the reasoning was that Dr. Young had a change of heart, so in order for the Joker to get his Titan formula, he would need to get into Arkham to secure it. One thing that I want to point out with this dialogue, which is also implied with other Titan enemies and through dialogue, is that this conversation essentially confirms that the Titan formula isn't fully complete, and every Titan-fueled enemy is essentially using an unstable version of it. Now imagine if Dr. Young, or someone smart enough in the Arkham series down the line, just stabilized the Titan formula. Honestly, that's kind of scary to think about. Anyways, we return to the surface and find out that most of the island has been taken over by thugs. We take out some snipers, head into Arkham Mansion and overhear the thugs recruiting for a quote-unquote security company in Metropolis, which in my opinion is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Me personally, I'm choosing Batman over Superman any day because at the least I have a chance of being a successful criminal in Gotham, whereas in Metropolis you just gotta hope he never turns into Homelander. On a serious note, the connection between different DC heroes is established within this game, as Metropolis and Keystone City are both name dropped, which probably alludes to Rocksteady's future intentions with the series, which is further backed up by something I'll touch on later on. We enter the library where we're presented with a hostage situation, but we're blocked off from entering the room that they're in. To save them, we climb to the top of the library and cut down the chandelier, which destroys the roof of the room, and we drop in and defuse the happy gas bomb. Once we've dealt with that, we speak to the hostages, who inform us that the thugs took Dr. Young. We leave and make our way to the West Wing, where we take out a thug that's been attached with a heartbeat monitor, which goes off once the thug has been knocked unconscious. This means that the Predator sections from now on should be a lot harder, as the Joker will inform the thugs once someone has been taken out. Joker also informs us that he could tell the thugs to come and stop Batman right now, but they're too busy attacking Cash, so he won't. I walked into the records room expecting to have a more difficult time with these thugs, but since the map is so claustrophobic and the AI in this game isn't too adaptable, it's actually a pretty easy encounter. Again, since this is the first Arkham game, I'll cut it some slack, but so far these Predator encounters have been disappointing in terms of difficulty. We free Cash and he informs us that Dr. Young is hiding in our office, which he seemed desperate to get to, which we can guess is because it's where her notes for the Titan formula are. Apparently Joker's thugs went over there around 20 minutes ago, so we rush to our office, take out the thugs, and find out that Dr. Young escaped with her notes. We track her using her fingerprints, but before we leave the office, Oracle informs us that the police tracked one of Joker's bombs around Gotham, and found out that they aren't actually armed, which confirms the theory that Joker used that threat as a diversion to stop the GCPD coming to Arkham. After that, we follow her fingerprints back to the library, where we find the Titan formula hidden in a book. So we destroy it, but as Batman guesses, the Joker has another plan to secure some Titan for himself. As we walk back up to the entrance of the library, vigilant players will notice that there's a visible clear wave and noticeable sounds of gas right by the door. We walk through it, which leads Batman to start coughing, and once we walk through the door, the game informs us that we are now in Wayne Manor. As we walk through the corridor, a storm pours indoors, and we start to hear dialogue relating to the day that Thomas and Martha Wayne were gunned down. The dialogue is actually quite intense, and as we hear both gunshots, we get a recreation of the famous scene.
For this. Stay where you are. I'll shoot.
I'll give you whatever you want.
Be quiet, lady. Just shut up.
Stay away from me! Run! Mommy!
The bat signal underneath of Bruce essentially confirms what I said during the previous Scarecrow section, but it pushes the idea to us that this moment was when Bruce became Batman. In a way, this is quite interesting when you compare it with the Asylum setting, as Batman is often portrayed as a separate entity to Bruce Wayne, which would make sense as this trauma could cause someone to have dissociative identity disorder, or DID for short. It brings up the question as to whether or not Batman is even mentally sane himself, which is an interesting idea because it's like he belongs alongside the other criminals within the asylum. Obviously not in the sense of him committing heinous crimes, but in the sense of he's not mentally well, which actually plays into the ideas that are presented within Arkham Knight, especially when it comes to the disconnection between Bruce and Batman. Moreover, once that scene ends, we turn into a young Bruce Wayne, and walk towards the end of the corridor as we hear dialogue between Gordon and another member of the police force. The cop essentially says that since Bruce is rich, he'll be completely fine, but Gordon pushes back on this because he acknowledges the mental toll that would take on somebody. Another thing I want to point out is that the young Bruce model is also clearly crying, which again backs up what I've been saying, and the change in size between young Bruce and Batman further alludes to the fact that he felt weak when that incident occurred. This entire scene is amazing, as it's another good look into Batman's psyche, and funnily enough explains Batman's origin story for those who don't know the Batman mythos, which is an example of the storytelling method of show don't tell. So yeah, if you haven't figured out by now, this is a Scarecrow section, which in my opinion does happen quite close to the first section. However, during this section, there's some minor puzzle and combat scenarios that have been added, which I guess was done to add some difficulty. But overall, it feels just like padding. We do what we usually do by going to the bat signal and shining it on Scarecrow, which takes us back to reality where we end up in the clock tower. An interesting detail about this is that there are clock tower hints in the Scarecrow's realm, which could imply there's some logic between the location and the floating island scenarios. Apparently we've been gone for a while. Honestly, I don't know how that's possible, seeing this all happened within one night, as the Joker comments on it through the intercom. The way we escape is by using a batarang to cut down the bell in the tower. As we try to exit, we encounter the first stun baton thug in the Arkham series, which stays relatively similar and solid throughout the entire Arkham series. All you have to do is find a way to get behind them by dodging, or find a way to disarm the thug. Once we deal with the thug, Joker tells us that Zsasz has taken Dr. Young, so we walk through the door and proceed to save her. Joker also tells us that he has no use for Dr. Young anymore, which at this point could imply that he's managed to acquire the Titan formula. As we walk up to Dr. Young, we see her clearly distressed as she's hitting Zsasz's unconscious body, calling him a monster, and the mascara on her face has ran down her cheeks, showing that she's been crying. It's almost like she's been taken through the stages of hell, as she's been tortured for making a deal with the devil, that being the Joker. Batman helps her up and she explains what we've already figured out. So in order to stop Joker, she tells us to head to the Botanical Gardens to destroy the Titan and the venom that is stored there. She attempts to open the Warden safe to get the security codes for the gardens, but unfortunately for her, Joker booby-trapped the safe and she ends up getting blown up while we get blown back. Yeah, pause if needed. Which leaves us unconscious for a few minutes. Once we've come to, Harley Quinn drags Warden Sharpe away and leaves us with a couple of thugs to fight, in which we handle very easily. Batman informs Oracle about Dr. Young, and he asks if there's any way to get past the Wayne Tech security gates. Oracle says that they're hack-proof and name drops Lucius Fox, which is another great nod to the Batman mythos, again especially since this is the first Arkham game. She explains that we will need the Warden to be able to bypass the security, so we trace his DNA from his broken cane. Before that though, I decided to be a terrorist and I blew up this completely inconspicuous wall and found the Warden's private office. Now, I'll have more to speak about this by the end of the video, but I do want to shed some more light on the significance of this room. Apparently this room took nearly a year to find, and the only reason why we found it when we did was because a Rocksteady employee during an interview noted that there was a notable Easter egg that wasn't found in Arkham Asylum. The reason why this room is very significant in my opinion is because it shows Rocksteady's ambition, as the room shows Warden Sharpe's plans to expand Arkham Asylum into a specific section of Gotham. You know, create Arkham City. This was hidden so well because even if you go into detective mode, you can't see any signs for a room behind the wall. And I think it's a parallel to Rocksteady's hidden intention with this game, which was essentially to make a game a tech demo for Arkham City. I believe this is the case simply due to the fact that Arkham Asylum has a lot of love put into it when it comes to comparing it with the Batman mythos, and in order for them, which at the time was a small studio, to get the green light for a bigger Batman game, they would need to make a perfect Batman game which was close to what they did. Also, Arkham Asylum feels very different to other Arkham games, purely because they're not building up to a grand story, which is something I'll again touch on near the end. We sneak out of the mansion and get very comical intercoms from Harley and the Warden.
I have made it illegal to walk on the floor in any part of the asylum. Anyone caught doing so will be... Oh, this is stupid. Anyone caught will have their legs removed and perform magic tricks for Emperor Joker.
Emperor Joker, enough.
You're doing great, Sharpe. Ready for more?
Also, the asylum has become more Joker-fied, with banners stating that it's Joker's asylum, graffiti on the Warden statue, and the asylum is filled with thugs both armed and unarmed. We save a medic from some thugs and follow the Warden's trail into the penitentiary, which eventually leads us to a slightly disturbing scene of the common inmates that were in the asylum before Joker brought his Blackgate thugs. This part of the prison is easily the most secure part we've been to so far. After we walk past them, we come across Poison Ivy, who asks us to help her plants, but of course we don't care, so we leave her crying. The next room leads us to the Warden, but it also has two places of interest, with the first one being the inmate, who's called Luke Oliver. And the reason for his existence is because in real life, a person called Luke Oliver won a contest to get his face rendered in the game. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Secondly, we find Aaron Cash trapped behind a see-through cell. Well, if you're paying attention, then you can see on the side a warning sign that says to stay away as the inmate may be impersonating someone else. Also, if you go into detective mode, you can see that this inmate doesn't have a skeleton, which is a very impressive detail. Once you speak to the quote-unquote Cash, he'll ask Batman to get him out of the cell, but if you scan him for the riddle, he'll drop his act. For those who don't already know, that's Clayface, who hopefully we don't run into sometime in the future because the ability to shapeshift seems pretty powerful. Anyways, we save Warden Sharpe, but while we're handling that, Harley Quinn frees Poison Ivy, which in this game is a harmless scene, but with the story changes later on in the series, it creates a couple of inconsistencies. Harley and Ivy during the scene don't seem to have a strong friendship or relationship for those who think that's the case, but during scenes from the Self-Deletion Squad game, it's implied that they've had a long-lasting friendship with one another at the very least. The time period between Arkham Asylum and Arkham Knight is around 3 years, so I guess you could say between that time they developed a bond, but it's an unconvincing argument considering the events of those games. However, again, this inconsistency is sprinkled throughout the Arkham series due to factors including what I said before about this game being essentially a teaser for a larger Batman game, which means that Rocksteady hadn't really thought about the larger story, but again I'll speak about this at the end. After this, the Joker appears on the intercom and releases all of the prisoners within the penitentiary who are all clearly unhinged. We free the Warden and we acquire his security code sequencer, which enables us to use the cryptographic sequencer which lets us bypass the security gates. After we escape the security tower, we leave the Warden behind to secure himself and we walk back through the corridors. As we're walking by the now empty cells, we get jump scared by our first lunatic encounter who unfortunately do not return in later entries, but yeah, this is dependent on who you ask. They jump out when you least expect them to and charge at you, but in order to defeat them, you have to counter their charge and then use a ground takedown on them. An interesting detail about them is that if you throw batarangs at them as well, they just tank them and you can see them put their hands over their head in order to block the batarang hits. These enemies fit the Asylum theme and aesthetic, as they have absolutely no dialogue other than screams and murmurs. They're dressed in restrained clothing which gives off the horror aesthetic, and often if they're not aggroed, then they can be seen crouching in a very vulnerable position and eating mice. This also calls into question whether or not the staff at Arkham are even helping these patients, as their mental state is clearly not there. The facilities throughout the game look run down and dirty, and these patients look malnourished. Obviously you can say that the Arkham staff are trying their best, which is valid, but not once do they comment on the conditions of the asylum, and in fact there's more evidence within the main story to suggest that the Arkham staff take advantage of the patients, such as what happened with Dr. Young. It's also quite interesting that Batman doesn't comment on this, but at this point, with the amount of crime he's stopped in Gotham, he probably is desensitized to these environments or understands that these patients may need a lot more resources compared to those in other cities. As we proceed onwards, we run into Harley, who shows off her acrobatic skills and double dares us to chase her. We grapple up to a platform where we defeat a couple of her thugs, while she swings on the descending lamp while giving her commentary. After we take down all the thugs, she escapes through to another wing of the penitentiary, so we disable the security and pursue her. She leads us to another hostage situation with Happy Gas, which I nearly fumble and get everyone killed, but luckily for me I'm clutching the fourth quarter.
Get out!
I clutched it. We then pursue her down another scary corridor. I just saw Harvey then, I was like, yeah, cool. Oh my god! Where she leads us to an electrified arena. Before I move on, there's one thing that I want to point out, which is that the security of the asylum seems very sophisticated and weak at the same time. I know this incident was an inside job, but it really feels like their entire security system is based off how long they can hold these supervillains off until Batman comes to save the day, because so far the only ones who have done anything remotely useful are Batman, Oracle and Cash. Anyways, Harley sends out a bunch of her thugs, which we absolutely destroyed to the point where some of them gave up and started spiraling. Due to this failure, Joker kicks Harley from the party list, so she tries to attack Batman but she fails miserably, and Batman steals her party list. Now, this list is just a bunch of Easter eggs, with most of the names crossed off with sad faces and 3 names with happy faces, which could either mean that the crossed out names are either not in the asylum or they did not want to cooperate with Joker, but it's most likely the former than the latter. The 3 names that aren't crossed off are Luke Oliver, again the fan employed inmate, Basil Carlo, who is Clayface, which could be a very subtle hint to his future involvement, and Waylon Jones, who is Killer Croc. She says that the Joker will come to save her, but after the cutscene, she can be heard and seen visibly crying, which either shows that she knows the Joker does not care, or that she's upset for failing the Joker. The Joker and Harley's relationship in this game is quite simple, so there's not much to analyze, but I do like that they hint towards their relationship complexities, such as the possibility that Harley knows she's being delusional, which is something that, as far as I'm aware, is canon in the comics, where Harley is in bold asterisks relatively sane compared to the Joker. We collect a Riddler trophy in a cell, but the doors close behind us and Harley says that that was her trap, which is quite funny because she either did a favor for the Riddler or just found and stole a Riddler trophy and planted it there for Batman to collect. Also, if we go back and talk to her, she says that the Joker has already won, which could imply that she sees all of this as a game, which would make sense through her mannerisms. We use and follow Harley's fingerprints, which leads us outside, where we see the Doctor who we saved earlier has seemingly been killed by a lunatic. At this point, the entire asylum is in disarray, as there's no more Arkham staff visibly around, there's lunatics and thugs roaming around freely, and even Batman's suit is visibly damaged, which has been a process that's been happening over time. Seeing as I don't know where else I'll be able to speak about this, I love this feature of the Arkham games as it shows the wear and tear the night is taking on Batman, and it also leans on his humanity as it proves he's not invincible. We head to the gardens and pick up Harley's trail from there, which leads us to another Predator encounter within the glass house, which ends up being one of the most claustrophobic sections of the game. This part isn't necessarily hard, but the size of the arena makes it hard to separate the thugs for takedowns, especially when Joker calls out whenever someone has been taken out. The only saving grace is that the intelligence of the thugs are quite low compared to later entries, which again I can't fault too much. After we take them out, we get a very awkward in-engine cutscene with Joker as he blocks our path using an electrical box and blowing up a corridor. We proceed to the generator room, where we save a janitor and turn off the generator to stop the flow of power, which allows us to cross over and continue chasing the Joker. This leads to us climbing up an abandoned tower, where Joker beautifully sings to us. The hell is that? We save another janitor who informs us of another hostage situation, and we head over to the aviary to save the hostages, but we are unable to be seen or attack any of the thugs because of the collars until we take out the cage operators, otherwise he'll drop the cages and kill the hostages. Again, this is a claustrophobic section, but we complete it correctly first try, take out all of the armed thugs and lower the hostages safely down onto the platform. We speak to the hostages, and one of them tells us that they were unaware of the Joker's involvement in the Titan production, which is obvious I guess, and he tells us that there's a hidden door to the lab. Using Harley's fingerprints, Batman tracks down the hidden door and we use the cryptographic sequencer to get in. A cutscene plays where the Joker shoots a Titan dart at 2 of his thugs that were helping him stash it, and after that a boss fight ensues between us and the 2 Titan thugs. Overall, the fight isn't that hard. It's similar to the Bane fight, but the difference is that you can mount the Titan thugs once they're damaged enough, and that you can use the mounted Titan thug to attack the other Titan thug. During the fight, we destroy the Titan that Joker wasn't able to secure, but he still has a significant amount, so we contact Oracle to fill her in, and we decide to try and recruit the help of Poison Ivy so we can create an anti-Titan compound. Once that's done, we call in the Batwing for its first appearance in the Arkham series, which drops us off the line launcher so we can escape the Titan lab and find Ivy. But before we leave the aviary, we find out that the Joker has killed the hostages we just saved, which I don't know how, but I'm going to assume he got his thugs to kill them. We find Ivy talking to our plants and we attempt to recruit her, but she refuses, so we threaten her by telling her we'll destroy every plant on the island if she doesn't cooperate. She tells us that there's a plant in Killer Croc's lair that can counter the Titan strain, so we get ready to head there and tell Ivy to head back to her cell. Now, Poison Ivy is a character that I'm familiar with, but I'm not too knowledgeable about her abilities. Before the Arkham series, I originally thought she was a seductress who was based more on the scientific side by using plant chemicals rather than the supernatural side. However, as I've learned through this series and brief bits of information I've heard over the years, apparently she's actually incredibly powerful to the point where she's connected to characters like Swamp Thing through the green. I think characters like her are really fun to have around in the Arkham series because it helps the foundations of the Arkhamverse as it presents the opportunity for metahumans and other superpower characters to be involved in the verse. Also, she's top tier in my book because she's a redhead. Anyways, we fill Oracle in, but we don't know the route to Croc's lair, so we head to Cash, who's still in the mansion, to find out how to get there. We drag a couple of thugs to their untimely demise. We attempt to drag a couple of other thugs into electrified water due to their sexist comments.
Yeah, not so special now, are you?
Why don't you just walk over here and stop him?
I think he's scared.
I think you're right. Scared of a little water. What a girl! What? You scared of a little water?
Yeah, me can't swim. We come across more armed thugs in the glass house, which we take down swiftly, and before we leave, we get attacked by Ivy's plants because the Joker gave Ivy more Titan. Once we head outside, we see that the entirety of Arkham Island is covered in plants, including dangerous ones that shoot deadly spores if you get too close to them. Honestly, these enemies are kind of annoying. They're essentially glass cannons because you can destroy them as soon as you get close to them, but if they shoot out their spores, you have to use batarangs on them to quickly destroy them, otherwise you take a significant amount of damage. Since the entrance of the mansion is covered with plants, we head in through the top, utilize our land launcher to navigate past the plants because the floor is lava, and finally reach Cash, who is holed up with two other Arkham guards. Cash informs us that Killer Croc is in a special cell under intensive treatment, and apparently all they do is, in his own words, drop meat down there every day and try to forget about him. Interestingly enough, he also has more security than the Joker whenever he was in the asylum, which that tells me that all of the Arkham staff fear Killer Croc way more than the Joker, which is understandable with his size and strength, and it's implied that they believe Killer Croc is unable to be rehabilitated, compared to the likes of the Joker, which explains without saying it outright how dangerous Killer Croc is. Croc being unable to be rehabilitated could be chalked up to his genetic condition, as he wouldn't be able to normally fit in with society, but I think it's more so based on his sadistic nature, as he clearly isn't safe to be around. Still, using an old sewer as a cell to contain Croc feels inhumane since Croc is still human, but at least in the main game, Croc and Batman never point this out, and it's probably due to Croc actually liking it down in the sewer, but it's not clear if that is true or not. Again, I know a decent amount about Croc from the comics, but I'm not an expert, so I could be missing something here. We leave the mansion and start heading back to intensive treatment, but on the way we encounter a group of Arkham never mind. Once we deal with that, we take out a sniper and enter intensive treatment through the roof. This takes us to the lobby where we have another Predator encounter, but this one is slightly more challenging than the previous encounters. Firstly, Joker has rigged the gargoyles to blow up, which tells us that both the thugs and Joker know about that strategy, which does call into question why they've never decided to search the gargoyles for Batman once they knew he was in the room. Also, from a developer perspective, it shows us that they know the massive advantage that gargoyles give us the player, since you could literally employ cheesy strategies such as abusing the inverted takedown to take out all the enemies. It makes sense since we're the Predator, and in that case, more powerful than our enemies, so we should be able to employ whichever strategy necessary. By taking this advantage out, it means we have to be more deliberate with our takedowns, and it simply encourages different playstyles for those who've been using the gargoyles as a crutch. However, this is the only explosive gargoyle encounter, which was probably done to alleviate player difficulty in later stages. Once we take out all of the thugs, we walk through the cell block transfer where our game we see the Batmobile driving towards the madhouse, and we find out that the Joker is the one driving the Batmobile with Batman in custody. The screen switches to us as the Joker, and we're walking with Harley and Zsasz, with Batman in a restraining chair. We hear disturbing dialogue from Batman claiming not to kill a family, and Gordon calling out to Batman for help because the thugs are going to kill them. Once we get to the end of the corridor, we switch perspectives to Batman, and Scarecrow reveals himself and starts analysing us. Batman shouts at the criminals to cut him free, which obviously falls on deaf ears, and leads to the Joker shooting us point blank. This leads to a death scene where the hint tells us to use the middle stick to dodge Joker's gun, which as a kid I thought was a legitimate hint, which could have led to a secret. Yeah, I was dumb. Before I move on, I want to touch on what Scarecrow says right before the Joker shoots us. He says that since Batman never got over his parents' death, it left him insane, which would again back up everything I've been saying about the previous Scarecrow scenes, as this seems to be the climax as to the story elements that these encounters were trying to portray. When Batman screams, "Cut me free," that might be how he truly feels about being branded a criminal, as he believes his crusade is justified, but if he were to be treated like the rest of the asylum inmates, which at this point would also have some validity to it, Batman may also act in a deranged way. Also, the Joker driving the Batmobile, in hindsight, is subtle foreshadowing, which I don't think was originally intended, but works within the story of the Arkham games anyways. We press retry, and we rise from Bruce Wayne's grave into the most twisted version of Scarecrow's arena we've seen so far. This section includes a lot more combat than the previous two, as Scarecrow essentially ups the fear toxin dose and drops us into a combat arena, which even has 2 weakened Titan mini-bosses. Obviously, we come back to our senses, and Scarecrow is now frustrated and shocked because apparently we ingested enough fear toxin to make 10 men go completely insane, which again is subtle foreshadowing to future events, which I don't think were intended. Scarecrow also calls out Batman for being insane like the other Arkham inmates, and also says that Batman needs the criminals as much as the criminals need him. After this, Scarecrow heads down to the sewers to try and contaminate Gotham's water supply with fear toxin, so we give chase while taking out a couple of thugs on the way. We get down to the sewers and confront Scarecrow, which leads to this scene.
Too late, Batman! One step closer, and this goes into the water. The cave will fill with your deepest, darkest nightmares, and you will never reach your precious venom roots.
Don't do it, Crane!
At this point, Batman's clearly tired because he wasn't even trying to stop Scarecrow too tough. We line launch our way to Croc's lair and contact Oracle to ask if she can find any schematics on the sewer network, but she tells us there's nothing on record and that it's a suicide mission, which calls into question how Batman ever arrested Croc in the first place. Unfortunately, we don't have any choice since we need the anti-venom spore, so we tune a scanner to detect those spores and set up an explosive trap for Croc later on. This section of the game is honestly frightening because our only sense of direction is the distance between us and the spore samples. Furthermore, the entirety of the lair is a couple of unstable wooden planks as platforms above a body of water, which adds to the uneasiness and uncertainty. Croc will jump out and attack you if you make too much noise from your movement, or in random moments where the only way to defend yourself is if you throw a well-aimed batarang, or if you get lucky and skim his collar with a backclaw. He'll also talk in an intimidating manner constantly, and start destroying platforms once you secured a certain amount of the anti-venom sample. All of this is already stressful, but the levels of horror peak when you have to make your way back to the start of the sewer system after moving 500 meters in. At this point, Croc starts getting more aggressive to the point where it leads to a chase scene and a final stand where we spring the trap and destroy the weakened platform to send Croc falling down a deep pit. Going back to the start of this section, It's almost like we swapped out psychological fear with a very physical fear with Killer Croc, and this gives us as the players the reasoning as to why Croc is treated the way he is, and it's simply because he acts or maybe just is a deranged animal. We escape the sewers, beat up some thugs that are apparently looking for the Batcave, and proceed to synthesize a cure for the Titan transformation, but before we leave, Ivy's plants infest the Batcave. After that, we grab the attachment for the Ultra Batclaw for its only appearance in the Arkham series, and proceed to escape the Batcave so we can stop Ivy, as our plants have clearly gone out of control. We walk through the main sewer junction and see that Joker started pumping Titan through the junction, so we contact Oracle to see if she can find out what's going on. As we climb up, Oracle informs us that Joker's pumping all of the Titan waste into the sewer system, and once the junction is full, it'll eventually release all the waste into the Gotham River. Oracle then informs us that we have to shut down the pump control rooms in order to stop the Joker polluting the river, so we focus on that first before we go after Ivy. We make our way to the west pump controls to shut them down, and then make our way to the east pump control for our last Predator encounter. Admittedly, this was the only encounter I died in, and it was because I was overconfident and this map, like the recent others, were also claustrophobic. We shut down the east pump room and head back to the pump control junction, where Joker traps us to fight another Titan fuel thug. Yeah, at this point it's getting old now. After we take out all of the thugs, we escape the pump control junction and decide to pursue Ivy again, since she's gained much more power over the island. She even starts speaking either telepathically or through her plants to everyone on the island, which again is a brilliant showcase of her power, and she briefly gets Joker cancelled.
For hurting my babies.
Oh Lord, does she ever stop going on about those plans of hers?
When I finish with Batman, I'll be coming after you, Joker.
Oh, that's gratitude. With give him presents, experimental chemicals,
for fuck's sake.
and they still turn on you. Well, good luck to you, Took. I got an army, a city-sized dose of ice, and a bag of... Come and find me when you're done with that race. Ooh, it'll be fun. You can bring the wine. I'll make the salad.
No, joke! I said I'll make the salad. Once we've made it back to the gardens, we kill a couple of plants on the way to Ivy, and we even come across a couple of Arkham guards who have been brainwashed by Ivy and her plants, but we show no mercy and break a couple of their bones. As we enter Ivy's lair, we instantly try to use the anti-venom on Ivy's plants, but she resists as she now believes that the Titan is good for them, but unsurprisingly, Batman is quite calm about all of this. This leads to a boss fight, which finally isn't another Titan-fueled brute, but it isn't much of a significant upgrade. The goal of the fight is to use your batarangs to attack Ivy once she opens up her shell, but you also have to avoid her vines, spores, and brainwash security. Her vines are very annoying until you realize you literally can only use the dodge button to avoid them, so you can't use the logical strategy of just running to another side once you see her attempt that attack. Other than that, the fight is good, but it just isn't anything special. I do like the aesthetics, but it's not a particularly groundbreaking fight. Also, Ivy literally could have won the fight if she just never opened up her pod, which I know is a nitpick because that's just a part of the game design, but it is funny to think that Ivy is so delusional that she didn't think just to do that. We beat Ivy by using our explosive gel once she's been weakened by the batarangs, as she just collapses. It's not really explained what happens to her because we didn't give her the anti-Titan formula, but she's clearly defeated since the island doesn't have any more deadly plants. Anyways, the Joker finally invites us to his party at Cell Block, so we humbly accept and find out we're the guest of honor. This leads to a king's welcome into the Cell Block, which could easily turn into a scrap if you decide to spoil the fun, and we enter the visitors room. We go into a first person perspective and the Joker surprises us with a bomb, which wasn't that surprising since it's the Joker, and we enter his throne room with him using the puppet Scarface for fun. Batman takes out the 3 thugs without trying, and we come face to face with the Arkham guards that have been injected with Titan, and are also being treated like wild dogs. Joker cries about us stopping all of his plans, and then sets his Titan guards free, which leads to another Titan-fueled enemy boss fight. Seeing as we all know how this is going to end, I'm just going to go back to the Joker's dialogue and point out just how much of a villain he is. He literally says that he abuses Harley physically, which adds on to the complexity of their relationship, obviously not in a good way. And it also raises one of the biggest questions. Why does anyone even follow the Joker? Like, everything we've just seen in the past minute shows that the Joker is a deranged psychopath who doesn't view anything or anyone as important, which honestly is comic accurate. This probably wasn't intentional, but it is an interesting commentary on how people are attracted to chaos, as the Joker is the embodiment of that concept, and unrelenting chaos in the majority of circumstances never ends with a positive outcome. Harley, who is a trained psychiatrist, should have never been with the Joker. His deeply loyal crew, who he speaks to like they're expendable and treats them the same way, could easily follow somebody that's less psychotic if they are career criminals. There's absolutely nothing appealing about the Joker, but when people are in vulnerable positions such as Dr. Young, Harley, his crew since they're convicted criminals, and even others in future titles, they all seem to gravitate towards him, which could explain why Batman is the absolute antithesis of Joker and could never understand why he is the way he is and why people follow him. We defeat all of the thugs, which leads to the Joker revealing he has Commissioner Gordon as a hostage, and he attempts to shoot Gordon with the Titan injection. Batman does a dramatic dive, and he takes the Titan injection instead, which leads to him resisting the Titan change. Joker shows an increased interest since he wants Batman to lose control, but because he doesn't, he then shows his true intentions.
That's not fair! Come on, get in! So, you wanna play hardball, Bats, do ya? Your call. Pickle, pickle. No! Oh, you're ruining my big night! Months of planning down the crapper! I just wanted to bring down your grim facade and for once let you see the world as I see it, giggling in a corner and bleeding. But you've denied me even that. I have nothing to live for.
This scene right here is the Joker and Batman's relationship, as it explains why they are each other's nemesis in the first place, and it backs up what I was saying about the Joker. He's essentially trying to get Batman to turn into him, even if it's for a little bit, so Batman can understand his point of view. Joker believes that life is one big joke, which is the reason why he doesn't take crime as something serious, whereas Batman believes that life is one of the most precious things due to his trauma as a kid, which is the reason why he takes crime really seriously, to the point that he strictly believes that criminals need to be reformed, and he doesn't kill, at least in this interpretation. With these characters being opposite forces of nature, another massive question is, how will this ever end? What's the point of Batman playing all of the Joker's games if every time he stops him, he'll just break out and do it again? Now, I could be one of those YouTubers that says that this game was about their relationship with one another, which very well could be the case, but in my opinion, I believe that these questions that I'm asking weren't even serious concepts that Rocksteady at the time believed they'd be able to explore. We're near the end, so I'll explain myself soon, but I want to quickly go through the last boss fight and cutscenes. At the end of that scene, Joker injects himself with a Titan formula, which leads to him becoming a massive Hulk-like Titan monster who drags Batman and Gordon up to the rooftop for a one-on-one battle with Batman, whilst many news helicopters are recording for the world to see. Joker tries to convince Batman that he needs to use the Titan to beat him, but Batman refuses and injects himself with the Titan antidote. This then leads into a boss fight, which, to put it simply, involves us fighting Joker's thugs until Joker gets distracted by the news helicopters. During this period, we have to use the Batclaw to bring the Joker down to the main floor, and once we've done that 3 times, we beat him. Now, most people usually criticize this boss fight for being boring and out of character for the Joker, but honestly, I don't think it's that bad. The boss fight is pretty quick, so gameplay wise it's not too annoying, and the Titan form of Joker actually makes sense for him if you pay a little attention. When Joker becomes a Titan, he's still completely aware of his actions, as he's able to talk to Batman and even command his thugs during the fight. In my opinion, I think this implies that the Titan formula doesn't have any mental effects on the Joker, as he's already too insane and unhinged for it to have any increased aggression or loss of self. Also, the Joker's form is an accurate representation of who he is as a person, which is a monster, and he completely acknowledges this as he doesn't question or react to the growth of claws, exposed ribcage, or his exposed spine, which have enlarged to inhuman levels. Through the gameplay, it's also shown that Batman couldn't have taken him down in a straight fight, so it's also in character that the Joker loses to Batman due to showboating and again treating this entire situation like a game. Once we pull Joker down for the final time, he falls through the floorboard, which leads to a last stand.
I can take it. I can take anything you throw at me, Bats. You can't beat me. I'm actually going to win. Ready for the next round?
Always.
What?
I'll never let you win. Never.
After this, we get the aftermath, which shows most of the inmates losing their Titan transformations and being locked up, again as Gordon speaks to Oracle. Batman walks up to Gordon, and Gordon tells him to get some sleep, but as this happens, a police radio describes an ongoing crime being committed by Two-Face, so Batman grapples up to the Batwing and goes off to stop him. The game ends abruptly there, with a small post-credit scene with either Bane, Scarecrow or Killer Croc rising from the water to put their hand on a crate of Titan, which as far as I'm aware, the canon ending is the one with Bane. You can see the passion oozing through this game, which tells me that during this time, they were massive Batman fans, which would also coincide with stories that I've heard about them putting a massive amount of hours just to get Batman's cape to function realistically. I think the Arkham City room was a showcase of the game that Rocksteady wanted to make as their dream Batman game, so in order to get that greenlit, they used Arkham Asylum as a proof of concept rather than a definitive starting point. Again, this would also tie into the many backstory changes that happen throughout the games as certain bios in Arkham Asylum get retconned. This isn't to say that Arkham Asylum is anything close to a bad game, because this is one of, if not the best, Batman games of all time, but certain story elements such as the return to story equilibrium at the end of the game shows that they clearly planned for this game just to be taken off as a one-off Batman story. Thankfully, DC and Warner Bros gave Rocksteady the green light so we could get, in my opinion, the best Batman game of all time, but that's a story for another day. We'll do a quick bonus round before we end the video with the Joker challenge maps. Originally, these challenge maps were only available to PS3 users, but with the Return to Arkham enhancement, they got re-released, except for PC. On PC, I downloaded a mod which lets me play as him, and honestly, he is pretty solid. His moveset is cool in the combat maps the first time you play them, but they do get a bit stale. In combat, he also only has one gadget, which is his gun, which is useful, but obviously there is a lack of variety. However, in Predator, Joker maps almost become hard mode maps because Joker doesn't have a grapple, easy to access detective mode because he has to use a weird glasses gadget to see enemies, which also makes him stand still, and he has no armor or glide. This is where the Joker stands out because these are actually quite fun, utilizing his more lethal gadgets like the chattering teeth and gun, while also not having a definitive way to escape enemies. If I had to rate it, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This video honestly took me way longer than I expected to essentially get everything out, but the reason why that was just generally because of things in life that were happening, as well as the fact that this is my second scripted video where I've tried to make it into a bigger project. What the intention of this video is to essentially make it a series. I would like to eventually revisit the Arkham series with Arkham City, Origins, as well as Night. But obviously that's all dependent on how well you guys respond to this. So if you guys love this video, make sure to leave it a like and also make sure to subscribe. Another thing I also want to address is obviously I want to apologize for not uploading as frequently as I probably should have. But again, I had exams, you know, I had to do my dissertation at the start of the month. So there was just a lot going on, which equated to me not being able to upload this sooner. Because if I had the time, this would have probably came out around mid-January. Because that's the time that I expected to get this video out. But there will be more, at least more videos on different series. Obviously depending on how well you guys liked this type of video. JJK, that video, I need to go ahead and upload that so that it doesn't get copyrighted, because that one got taken down. For you guys that don't know, I tried to keep you guys updated through the community tab. So yeah, that one got copyrighted, so I'm gonna need to re-upload it in a way that it doesn't get copyrighted again. So that will be coming out. That's probably gonna be the next thing I work on. So within, I'd say, the next two-ish weeks, that should be out. And also with JJK, I plan on making another JJK video, so that isn't gonna be a standalone video. That should be a part of the series until obviously the manga and anime ends. Just for you guys that did subscribe and were waiting for that. Now, what I plan on doing is also doing other series. So, you know, if you have any sort of suggestions that you want me to do, make sure to leave them in the comments below. I'm planning on doing a Star Wars video, which I, again, was midway through scripting before I realized I need to make sure I get one of these projects done in a swift fashion. So that one is one that I'm already working on. You know, I've had Persona in my head, and that's one that I got to the start of, but I didn't really, you know, that I didn't get too far into planning that one. But yeah, if you have any sort of suggestions, just make sure to leave them in the comments below. And again, if you guys agreed with me, disagreed with what I was saying about the story of this video, you guys may have more knowledge about me in terms of the Arkham series, you know, make sure to leave all of those comments down below and create a discussion. You know, I'm all ears. I'm open to hearing what you guys have to say about this series, even on the recent game that came out, which obviously, you know, we can't, it depends if you guys want to speak about that, if we're being real. But yeah, other than that, you know, thank you guys again very much for watching. You know, this is a very long video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it all the way through. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Take care and have a lovely day.